Hi, fifth graders. It's Mrs. Lurch, and tonight I am coming to you to talk about what is a star. Now, obviously, you guys are fully capable of looking up into the night sky and seeing stars. I know you know that much, but our goal is to find out more. So, today specifically, our objective is to know how our stars formed. Also, to know what different types of stars are there and what is the life cycle of a star, and specifically what is the life cycle of the different types of stars. And on to some stellar basics. This is basics about stars. Stellar, that means the same thing as a star. So first of all, stars are not a solid. It's very important to note they're not something that could be visited and stood on. Besides the point of being incredibly hot, they are not solid. They are actually highly explosive balls of gas, and specifically, they are made of hydrogen and helium gases. Different types of stars have different amounts of each of the gases. Our star is mostly helium because the hydrogen is turned to helium, but we'll go a little bit more into detail with that later. Stars are different than planets, anything else in the solar system, because they give off heat. Of course, we know that from our star. They give off light. Again, we know that from our star. You can walk outside and see it. And they give off something that you may not know about, electromagnetic radiation. This is the important word there. They give off radiation. And this is the reason why we have to wear sunscreen when we go out in the sun, because radiation is very damaging to our cells. Something else very important to know about stars is there's this special reaction called fusion occurring in the core of stars. And without this reaction, a star is not a star. It's just a body of gas and dust. But when this fusion starts going on, it creates so much energy that is what creates the shining, the heat, the light, which is the shining, the radiation. That fusion is absolutely important to know and understand. That's the reason a star is a star. Now, you see this word mass, and I'm sure you've heard that before. It's a science word. It basically means how much stuff is inside of something. So why are we talking about it with stars? Well, depending on the star's mass, that will determine how long the star will live. And specifically, massive stars, so the larger of the stars, largest of the stars, they burn for millions of years, whereas the average or small stars burn for billions and trillions of years. And here is a picture. You can see G is our star, the sun, and we're mid-range, so we're considered average. So we would be burning for billions of years, and more specifically about 8 billion for the life of our star. Whereas if you're looking more at star B, that is what you would consider massive star. So this would burn for more, closer to a couple million of years. And star M is smaller than us, so that would probably burn for billions of years. The mass inside of the star determines how long it will survive. Alright, these super cool pictures you see here are not science fiction. These are actually pictures of nebulae, or singular nebula, several nebula. And nebulas are very important for stars because it's basically clouds of space dust and hydrogen gas molecules that eventually produces stars. When you have enough collect, gravity starts to pull them together and they start ramming into one another, and that is what starts the fusion process. In the moment that the fusion starts, it is officially known as a star instead of a nebula. Once fusion has begun and the star continues to build and get stronger, eventually it will enter its main sequence. And the main sequence is basically just the majority of the star's life cycle. This is when it's burning brightest, hottest, and for the longest period. And again, fusion is the key here. The hydrogen gas molecules are so dense inside of the star. Gravity is so powerful that literally they have nowhere to go. They're just ramming into one another. And when a hydrogen hits a hydrogen, they fusion, to form helium. And that is the gas that is being produced inside stars and being burned as its fuel. And this happens in the core of stars in the center. And depending on the star, the white blue stars in their main sequence are the hottest. Our sun, which is a star, is burning yellow, which is an average temperature, and the cooler main sequence stars are orange. And remember, the lifespan of a star depends on its mass. How long it will burn depends on how much mass is inside, because mass is its fuel. After a star's main sequence, depending on its mass, the star will change. First, we're going to talk about a red giant. This would be a smaller mass star, similar to our star. After it burns, it will turn brighter than what it was in its main sequence. The high luminosity, put off a lot more light. It'll be very bright and a lot bigger than its main sequence. And our star will actually burn as a lower temperature star than what it was in its main sequence. And remember, low temperature for a star is about 8,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And red stars are the coolest of the stars. So remember, white, blue was hot, yellow, orange, medium, red is cooler. So as our star, the sun, will die, it actually will get cooler. Eventually, a red giant will run out of helium fuel and it will turn to a white dwarf. And again, this is the smaller mass stars. And a white dwarf is basically the leftover from a red giant. It's what happens when the fuel runs out. It has a dense white core, and it does have luminosity to it, but eventually it will burn out and become a black dwarf. And a black dwarf gives off no light. It's basically just the particles of the gas and dust that's left over. And this is going to be the last stage of our sun and other similar stars. Now, very different from our star, the sun, the larger mass stars, when they die, they will actually turn to red supergiants, which what you see right here, this is Betelgeuse, and this is an actual star that is in this phase, in the red supergiant phase. And they're different from our star, the sun, when it's going to die, the red giant. Again, it is brighter, burns brighter, high luminosity, and it's equivalent to approximately about 10,000 suns, which that gives you an idea of how bright it is. And this only happens with extremely massive stars. And these, instead of dying out to a white dwarf, they will die off in a supernova, which supernova is super cool because it's basically a huge explosion. And who doesn't like that? That's just really cool to think that some stars actually literally go out with a bang. If a star dies in a supernova, it can kind of take two different paths here that you see. If it's a larger, medium-sized star, a lot of times after the supernova, the Big Bang, the explosion, what will be left over is what we call a neutron star. And neutron stars are really unusual, and there's still a lot to be learned about them, but scientists do believe that they actually do rotate, which is very odd. So neutron stars is one possibility. This is for the large, medium, large stars. If it's a super high mass star, then this is the cool part. After the supernova, it can actually turn to a black hole, which we really have no graphic representation. This is just a computer rendering of what we think it's like, but it's basically a point where the gravity is so intense that even light gets sucked in. That's why see the black there, it would pull in all light, all other objects. But again, it's very mysterious, just like the neutron star. We have a lot to learn about these. Okay, now just to pull it all together, I have a really great graphic for us here. What you see here is a stellar evolution chart. Basically just maps out the different steps of different kinds of stars. And you'll notice that all stars pretty much are starting from a nebula, which we knew that from the cloud of gas and dust that collect. And you can go one of two ways. And it depends on the mass, like we've already talked about. The low to medium mass stars take this top route, burn main sequence, so it's more of a yellow orangey star. When it's starting to die, turns to a red giant, and eventually sheds its outer layers, which that's the planetary nebula. That's just the outer layers being released, the gas and dust off into space. So it's creating a new nebula, and then what's left over is a white dwarf, and eventually turning to a black dwarf. Then, if it's a high mass star, so the larger, it'll burn its main sequence, turn to a red supergiant, and die in a supernova. This is different than our star. We will not go out in a bang. The higher mass stars do go out in a bang. And again, you can basically get one of two end results after a supernova. A neutron star for the medium mass stars, and then a black hole for the larger mass stars. So the path in which the star will take really depends all on its mass. That's really, really important. Alright, we've reached the end, and this is a joke because it shows supernova, and it's really cool because it looks almost like an hourglass, which this is an actual real space picture, but anyway, I put the end supernova, but of course this is just for some stars. Just to wrap things up a little bit, remember by now you should know how stars are formed, what they're made of, what it takes to make a star, the different types of stars, including different mass, different colors, and you should also understand the different paths of the life cycles that they take depending on their mass. For class tomorrow, you need to make sure that you have your notes done to the best of your ability. We will be using them in class, so make sure that you've done your best to meet all of our expectations and be ready to talk, share, and learn more about stars.